rarest species of bird breeding in Ireland. One of Ireland's most famous saints, Columkill, was born a few miles from Glenveagh by the shores of Loch Garten in the year 521. A ruined church marks the site of Columkill's monastery. It's still a place of pilgrimage, perhaps for those facing the same fate as Columkill, the loneliness of a life abroad. Tragedy and exile marred the original consolidation of the estate that is now the national park. 47 families were evicted from here in April 1861. Until then, the landlord, an Irishman, John George Adair, had been known as a passionate nationalist and a fervent advocate of tenants' rights. Ironically, this barbarity preserved the wildness of the place, and now 100,000 visitors come to the park each year. They have to search for the visitor centre because from a distance it's almost invisible. The site is skillfully disguised as a piece of bog. It was sunk into the ground, covered with peat sods and planted with heather. This sensitive design sums up the park's continuing effort not to detract from the natural environment. But so many visitors each season poses an intricate problem of management for the national park. We come here to enjoy the beauty and the solitude, but our very presence, our cars and our litter could easily spoil the atmosphere. The national park aims to address this problem by channeling visitors along a well-organized route. First stop is the visitor centre itself. Here, people of all ages can be entertained and informed by a series of displays. Each exhibition room has a theme. You begin with the geology of Donegal. Then you see aspects of local archaeology before going on to natural habitats and their wildlife. There's a special display for the scourge of Glenveagh, the midge. It's important that these displays are interesting and informative because for some people, the visitors' centre may be their main experience of the national park. The simple process of looking after people is another pressure on the park. We're miles away from the main sewers here. So, discreetly sited away from public view, a novel method of treating sewage has been installed. A blanket of peat filters the effluent. No chemicals are involved. This is a natural sewage system in keeping with the eco-friendly management principles of the park. The same spirit of innovation and original thinking has prompted trials of biodiesel fuel in the coaches used to ferry people around Glenveagh. It's made from rapeseed oil and is pollution-free. There is one great principle observed in the Glenveagh National Park. Cars are discouraged. Everyone leaves their car at the entrance. Visitors are free to walk about the park, but most prefer to take the coaches that are available to ferry them to where they want to go, along this narrow, winding road by the side of beautiful Loch Veigh. There is only one route through the park. It's never congested because everyone is using the coach system. In this way, the thousands of visitors are comfortably and efficiently funneled through the landscape. They can enjoy looking at the breathtaking scenery, but they have only a limited impact on the wider, pristine environment. For many, the destination of the journey is the castle. Standing alone in its dramatic glaciated valley, it's the epitome of romance. It was built by John Adair in the 1870s in a style that fitted the Victorian notion of what was right for a castle in the wilderness. The portraits tell how the estate was established by John Adair and his American wife Cornelia, and how it eventually became the property of Henry McElhenny, an Irish-American who fittingly in 1983 offered the castle and grounds as a gift to the nation, having already sold the rest of the estate to form the national park. Everything remains as it did in Mr. McElhenny's time. He was an art collector.
Now this is the drawing room of Glenveagh Castle, and it is the largest room in the house. This room was used by the guests in the evening time after dinner.
Each of these rooms is redolent of the gracious style of life of Mr. McElhenny and his friends. There is a frisson of romance.
And this room's claim to fame is the fact that in 1975, Greta Garbo spent 5 nights in this room.
Down below the castle is a very beautiful garden, the crowning achievement of Henry McElhenny's ownership of Glenveagh. Cornelia Adair had begun the planting of the gardens, but it was he who transformed the grounds into one of the great gardens of Europe. Although quite far north, the glaciated valley is remarkably sheltered, owing to its steep sides, and can foster plants that don't thrive elsewhere in Ulster. Over a period of 30 years, McElhenny gradually developed the gardens, putting in rare or simply beautiful plants. He also built a series of secluded informal terraces and walks. The backdrop is the Gothic conservatory designed by Philippe Julian. Visitors love to stroll along neatly ordered paths, admiring the well laid out beds. The brilliant colours of the herbaceous borders seem particularly startling and exotic in comparison with the sober colouring of the Donegal landscape beyond. The kitchen garden is a riot of colour. The gardens and the castle are the clue to the good management of the park. They offer a honeypot of attractions which more than adequately satisfies the visitor. There's so much to see and do within the vicinity of the castle that only the hardy few will venture far beyond to look for the real wildlife. Instead, nature in microcosm can be admired over a cup of tea. The cafe on the terrace allows visitors to savour the charm of the garden birds. It fulfills a need that we all have to experience nature close up. And while we enjoy what is a social, almost urban experience, out beyond in the wildness, nothing has been disturbed or put under pressure. Of course, it's out here that the real significance of the national park is obvious. Its role as guardian of the environment is paramount. In the early mornings, there are red deer, hidden, secretive, out on the hills. Native red deer had died out in Donegal by the mid-19th century. In 1891, Cornelia Adair brought 6 deer over from Lincolnshire. Edward VII helped out with the gift of a stag, and in due course many more were introduced. There are now around 500 deer. In the past, wolves and the available food supply would have controlled the population. Nowadays, the necessary control is done by culling. Glenveagh's oak woods, though small, are significant because natural oak woods are so few in Ireland. But too many deer have a disastrous impact on the woods. They eat every seedling that appears. They break down the undergrowth while rotting, so the understory disappears and the forests cannot regenerate. Where the park has erected fencing, the situation is much improved. Notice the difference. Saplings are growing of ash and birch. The understory is developing, and yet this area has only been enclosed for about 5 years. The national park has yet another major problem to contend with. This plant, Rhododendron ponticum. From the castle garden where Mrs. Adair planted it in the last century, it has spread into the surrounding mountainsides. It may look pretty, but it's become a scourge here, just as it has in Killarney and elsewhere in Ireland. It grows quickly and strongly, producing a dense and smothering carpet like this. No native plants can compete with this aggressive foreigner. Not even the oak trees will grow here. It's a dead monoculture, for no wildlife is sustained in its suffocating shadows. Since Since 1989, a considerable area of rhododendron has been eradicated by contract work, and it's hoped to get rid of all unwanted rhododendrons by the end of this millennium. It's a huge job. The only known way to destroy it is by chopping it down and burning it. This is demanding, labour-intensive work. The results are not always pretty, and many visitors are disturbed when they see the policy in action. It is indeed a desperate remedy for a desperate situation, and the job doesn't stop here. Even when the shrub has been cut down, it will sprout again. These new shoots have to be pulled up by hand or poisoned, in which case the weed killer must not wash into the water. But if the rhododendron could be ousted, one would see an amazing biological change over the next 20 years. Glenveagh itself is not only beautiful, it's also an important wildlife resource. Its solitude and tranquility is unsurpassed. Few people come so far up the lake, so here the otters play, one of Ireland's most appealing mammals. They will fish in the river estuaries on the Atlantic coast. But come to quiet places like this to rear their young. There are usually 2 to 3 in a litter. There's lots of time to play, but there are also serious tasks to attend to. Although a creature of the waters, the young don't swim by instinct. They have to learn. Mother is teaching this cub. Foxgloves grow on disturbed ground, often where trees have been felled in the past. They're a food plant for a variety of moths and butterflies, like the foxglove pug moth caterpillar. It eats a hole through the base of the flower to get at the stamens and the developing seeds within that are full of the proteins that it needs. When fully grown in September, it'll leave the flower to pupate in the soil below. The flower heads that it has attacked will usually remain on the plant long after the others have fallen. These upland streams are important for wildlife. Among the stones, you'll often see a dipper, blinking and dipping in its characteristic way. It's just caught a stonefly larva, which it's fished out from below the water. Dippers are faithful to their patch of river. Only extreme winter weather will persuade it to leave its territory. The insect life of these mountain streams is not particularly varied. But the quietest waters here support one of Ireland's most elusive creatures, the water rail. You'll have to wait a long time to see it, but you might be lucky. It's very shy and very rarely seen or photographed as it stalks the undergrowth at the water's edge, searching for invertebrates. You probably have a better chance here of seeing that other exotic and beautiful creature, the red-throated diver, albeit at a distance. Although there are probably fewer than 10 pairs breeding in the whole of Ireland, all are found in Donegal. The lake conceals a busy underwater life. These are daphne, or water fleas. These zooplanktons swarm in their billions in the darkest part of the lake, moving upwards towards the surface of the water as night falls. They are the basis for all life in the lake. The red-throated diver is rare here because County Donegal is at the southernmost edge of its European range. Divers spend their winters off the coast, coming inland in the summers to breed. Lochveigh is their summer fishing grounds. They don't nest here, preferring secret pools high up in the hills. The cold and isolated waters of Lochveigh nurture their own genetically distinct populations of fish. The stony lake bottom is the nursery of this race of Arctic char. They are salmonids, but can survive only in the coldest and deepest waters, where they grow very slowly. Up above Lochveigh, the steep mountains are etched with inaccessible gullies. These are the breeding places for another unusual summer visitor, the ring ouzel. It's a very shy bird, which is rarely seen. The nest is tucked into a precipitous ledge. 3 to 4 chicks are a full brood. Both parents tend the chicks. The female is brown, like its relative, the hen blackbird. The male is jet black. Both sexes have a conspicuous white crescent on the breast. Glenveagh National Park is so managed that its landscape and the lives of the animals it protects are hardly disturbed by our presence as visitors. And it's an ironic quirk of history that this land, once wrenched so brutally from its inhabitants, has been returned to us, their successors, as part of the people's landscape.
At this time next week, the People's Landscapes visits Connemara National Park.